All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Thad Weir. I'm here with the founder of Acutus Financial, Todd. And today we are going to be going over a few things about raising capital. Todd's been a savant in that industry for 40 years, from building businesses to funding his own ventures to helping other people get started on theirs. And today we're going to ask a series of questions designed to help educate myself, first of all, but also let you know more about what we got going on and paint a better picture for you as to what we do. So we're going to get started off. Todd, now you've been known to say in a lot of our meetings that people, businesses, entrepreneurs, they should always be raising capital. Good times, bad times, it should almost be part of their business. Can you explain that in more detail and tell us a little bit more about why you think raising capital should be not just one component of a business, but an ongoing discipline?
All right, been doing this a long time, as you know, 40 years. Owned my own brokerage firm, and I've seen literally thousands of companies. Stats call it this way: 50% of new businesses formed will fail in the first couple of years, and 80% of what's left over in the next five. That said, the two primary reasons businesses fail are a lack of capital and/or a lack of talent. If you have more capital than you need to buy all the talent that you desire, you've knocked out two of the legs of how a company could fail. So in my opinion, just keeping it very simple, and especially for startup companies or companies that might require a high burn to get going, before profits minus expenses can fuel the amount of profit you need to scale as fast and proficiently as you want to, the question flips: why wouldn't you continue to raise capital? Capital is your safe harbor. We live in a system of capitalism. If you've got too much of the first seven letters of that word, you increase your opportunity and your chances to drive shareholder value exponentially. So yeah, would I ever stop raising capital? No, not until profits and expenses provide all of what I need to scale and leave behind what will drive shareholder value.
Okay. Now, a follow-up question I have for that is people, I'll put myself in this bucket, getting started out, haven't really run a business before, really just getting started with you and Stan in this. There's a lot of responsibility, at least it feels like there's a lot of responsibility that's going to come with money that's injected into the company from investors. You know, quote unquote, we're on the hook now. We still are, but now we're responsible for other people's money. Is that something that should really be considered, that added pressure? Is that something that we should take into consideration as far as like a fear of failure kind of a thing? Or is that raising capital and those investors knowing their money is at risk? Is that enough to be like, you're getting our best effort? We can't obviously guarantee results, but should that be a consideration when you're raising money, that fear of failure, responsibility for other people's money?
If I understood you right, Ted, you're asking two things: on the hook and the pressure that causes you for being responsible for someone else's money. Okay, we live in a world of risk. There's risk involved with everything we do: eating a pizza, walking across the street, or buying a stock in the stock market. We can guarantee you two things about businesses in our country, under the system of capitalism. They won't be worth the same amount of money tomorrow as they were today, meaning their value is going to change. Okay, so what I would, if I'm going to give you a bullet point thing, whenever you're exchanging debt or equity for investor dollars, be fully disclosed. The biggest mistake I see new founders make is they're afraid to talk about risk. Okay, they think that the investor wants to hear just all the good stuff. No, share the risk with them. They know there's risk already. Okay, but share that with them. And in doing so, being truthful with them, they can evaluate the decision. And more importantly, they're going to respect you more for disclosing that risk. So first, rule number one: disclose risk, disclose it fully. Okay? Now, once you have, should you feel pressure? Should you allow yourself to feel pressure that causes undue stress or paralysis with regard to driving your business? No, you should feel responsibility. Treat their money as if you would treat your own. Okay, be that frugal with it. Everything you've done in your life, you haven't always bought the right stock. Okay, you haven't always made the right decision. You haven't always bought the right car. We're all going to make mistakes. Okay, so treat the money as if it were your own. Okay, that's your measuring stick. A lot of this is all based on truth, true disclosure, true custodianship, and then leverage the dollars for all they can get you. Put that money to work, okay, as responsibly as you can to liberate shareholder value, because that's what the investor wants you to do. It's like that old parable in the Bible, right? King's going away and he gives 2 talents to one guy, 5 to another, and 10 to another. The guy with the 2 buries his in the ground. The investors don't want you to do that. The guy with 5, he brings back a little bit of interest. The guy with 10, makes a landslide victory. Well, who'd the king put in charge? The guy that took responsible enough risk and made him the most. So serve your investor needs, wants, and desires. They want you to make as much as they understand the risk. You have to tell it to them. Treat the money as if it were your own, and then put it to work as responsibly as you can to drive as much value as you can. And at the end of the day, if you can measure up to that, sleep well at night, but don't let the pressure paralyze you. And conversely, don't let the money make you sloppy. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to jump into my my second question then.
Okay.
So this is kind of jumping off the back of the first one where we say that always be raising capital. And, there's obviously some, if you can't put the money to use, may not be the best to it, but is it necessary? Is it 100% necessary to build a business, including raising capital in it? Is it possible to, bootstrap it, do it yourself? If so, what are the pros? Obviously there's pros and cons to each. So can you talk about is it necessary? Is raising capital now 100% necessary?
All right. A lot of questions, Eric, just that little bit.
Okay.
Is capital necessary to build a real business? I mean, you could build a real business. Okay. You're my son. I know you. You're a hell of a golfer. Played on a PGA, right? Do you need capital to teach somebody how to golf? And can you generate revenue through teaching people how to golf? You could. So for that type of business, coaching, advisement, accounting, do I need money to teach people how to raise capital or how to structure a business? Okay. Or put together their math and their model? No. So when you think of it, coaching, advisement, industries like that, even web development that rely on your skill, you don't need capital to start them. And you could build a real and nice business. Then you get into other industry sectors where you might need a small amount of money. For instance, marketing digital products, you'll need a marketing budget, right? E-commerce, buying something from one to sell it on another online courses, affiliate marketing. You don't need a lot of money to start a business like that. In a business like that, you use the words bootstrap. A business like that, you might tap your credit cards or your own reserves. Simple, easy to get that business started. Keep the overhead really, really low. Now, let's go to the other side of the spectrum. What if you want to develop a technology? What if you want to develop a robot? What if you want to build semiconductors? What if you need to construct a plant? Now, unless you have unlimited.
It's hard to build that from scratch, right?
Hard to build that from scratch. Okay, so there you tap the capital markets. So to answer your question, unless the business's success relies on your already resume talent so that you can easily teach somebody how to do something you already know how to do or provide a service, based on your own talent, you don't really need much money. But conversely, if you get into, you need plants, manufacturing facilities, well, unless you're an unlimited cash supply, you're going to need to tap the capital markets.
In those beginning companies like coaching, for instance, let's take coaching. If you do integrate raising capital into that, it feels like you would have the ability to grow faster because you'd have more capital to either reach audiences or maybe develop a product or a sales funnel quicker. Does that come with any? Sounds like just from your reaction it may not be necessary. It may be better to do it organically.
Well, think about it. If I was a golfer like you, how would I start? I've got an email list, right? I've got a cell phone. I've got a Facebook page. for no cost, I would market to all those people and say, hi, former PGA Canada golfer, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to teach you how to golf, X number of dollars per lesson. Here, boom, boom, boom. Doesn't cost you any money to do that. Now, if you want to market outside your warm market, well, then you're going to hire, the Derricks of the world or marketeers. So now you're going to need a little bit more money. Now, if you wanted to raise money, here's the problem, or here's not a problem, but realistically speaking, what in that type of business, what are you looking to do? You're looking to leverage labor, right? More money would allow you to market more, hire a couple extra golfers, okay, couple of your pro buddies, so that you could generate more revenue, okay, through teaching more people, through more instructors. You generate more revenue, but you saw how that type of model, the more you try to expand it, like when you were at that one facility in South Carolina, where you had the pro and then his underling left, took a couple coaches with him because the business of success relied more on the skill that they could provide versus what NVIDIA's semiconductors provide to the AR marketplace. Different deal. So you could raise up a little bit of money to expand, or you could raise up money to buy a facility, 20 acres, put up your building. Now you've got a mini IMG. I mean, when you look at that model and where voluntary tennis started 40 or 50 years ago, and what that grew into, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. So, it depends on how much the skill set or the IP, or the technology can be leveraged and what upside it provides. Will determine, okay.
Yep. All right. So one of the last questions I want to ask is, in our company, and you can tell me if this belief is just not something to worry about now, but I like the idea of keeping our company privately owned 100% me, you, and Stan. I don't like the idea of sharing the equity, more so just because I want it to be ours. Like, I don't know if that's a selfish thing. Would it be worth maybe giving up a little bit to receive an injection of capital via raising cash? Possibly. It would, it'd depend on the terms, and you'd be the one to do that. But is that a fair belief to want to keep it privately owned, or is there a point where it's like you really need to consider raising capital and giving up equity to grow? Or are there other terms, like you mentioned debt earlier? Is there a situation where debt might be a better alternative?
Well, a lot of questions there too. Okay, should I raise capital? And then what type of capital? Debt or equity? There are some people out there that will tell you from an equity-based perspective, don't raise money. I mean, after all I've been through in 40 years, are the headaches of bringing equity partners into your business worth it? I mean, it's just personal opinion. If it's your business, and from this point forward, I would advise you, if it's your business, you feel that close about it, ensure you maintain voting control, or don't take equity funding whatsoever. Because again, bringing shareholders into it, different perspectives, different objectives, not that anybody's bad or anybody ever starts out wanting to cause trouble. It just boils down to the differences between people, their mindset, what they think should go on. And sometimes it's more of a pain in the backside, and it's actually debilitating to the company. So if you can raise capital without selling equity in a business you're heartfelt about, okay, it's your business, family business, then I say use debt. Use debt. Know your math, know your model, provide an opportunity to the investor, okay? And if you want, overpay him a little bit in exchange for the equity you don't want to give. Make the deal as good as it needs to be, okay, with a little extra gravy on it to secure, secure the opportunity of getting that capital. But I'm an advocate of this. Unless you absolutely need to take the equity-based capital, I would tell you through my life experience, don't. Okay. Try to do it a different way.
The debt way mainly?
Yeah,
would that be your number one alternative?
Or I would leverage a structure that allowed me to hold on to all I wanted. Okay, like you look at different businesses as they grow. I mean, Amazon, for God's sake, started out as what? Let's sell books online. Yeah. Today they're competing with UPS and FedEx for package delivery. So again, if it's a smaller business, I mean, structure can afford you some protection. own the parent company privately 100%, you and your brothers, okay? Underwrite a subsidiary, form a subsidiary. Be willing to share equity in the subsidiary to the point to the point you decide how much control you want to give up. I don't have any problem sharing equity or making money for people, but I've learned over time that if I'm responsible for a business, I want to run it my way. I want to run it my way. I mean, if it's my behind sitting here trading off 60, 80 hours a week of time I could be spending with my family, the last thing I want to do is put control of that entity in the hands of somebody else. I mean, and I've done it a couple times and it's come back to bite me. So,
Okay. No, it's a good point. Now, here's my closing question. I'm launching a product, right? I have
okay.
not been, I have not been raising capital. I have a limited runway.
Right.
A lot of people in my position, they may not raise capital, they may not know if it's for them. But let's say you get integrated into that company. They're not raising capital. The product's launching. They have a limited runway. In the first 30 days, what would be your number one initiative?
Again, you know what? Risk tolerance. That all goes back to the founders. Okay, and this is a question I'm giving to anybody. How much risk tolerance do you have? What personal bankroll do you have? How much risk do you want to take on? In a generic sense, it's real simple. If you've got a limited amount of money and you're not going to raise capital, then cut your overhead down to zero, as close to zero as you can possibly get. Leverage only the resources or expend in areas where the resources can generate revenue. If it can't generate revenue, or if it's not an integral part of what will generate revenue, don't spend money on it. I mean, classic example is a technology company who burns a bunch of money, investor money, to build their technology, their product. Now they're ready to launch, right? They have their product, their tech. Now they're ready to launch. Here's a big area a lot of founders don't recognize. Well, the skill set required to build that technology and where you've expended resources is much different than the resources you now have to leverage to generate revenue, okay, through selling that product. So if here, simple example, if you had 10 IT guys, 10 tech developer guys, 10 non-revenue producing engineers, now your product's done. Well, I'm going to take the money I'm spending on 50 to 80% of these non-revenue generating items. I'm going to then expense that in marketing, in sales to drive revenue so that I generate more revenue than I do have expense. If you don't do that, it's almost a surefire way to die. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just
So
want to bring
focus
that
your
point up.
efforts, cut overhead, focus efforts on the revenue producing activities.
100%. If you have a product and it's ready for market,
Yeah.
then cut your overhead down as much as you possibly can and expense only in areas that can return you revenue, return on ad spend, salesmen, drive the sales of the company. Because what you've got to do there is prove your product is market worthy. It may not be. I've rolled out products that I thought were going to hit home runs. They flopped. It's the worst feeling in the world. Okay. But you want to know you gave it the best shot you could.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's all. Those are the main questions I wanted to cover. Thank you for taking the time to do this today. I look forward to doing more of these with you. These
Okay.
3 to 4 or 5 question little survey interview questions. And I look forward to doing it again. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good one, bud.
Bye.